Hi everyone, so welcome. So this is my guide to the Old Ghost Road Ultra. It is version 2.0 part 1. So, I hadn't really planned on doing any more of these, but I've managed to secure an entry into next year's race. So I thought I'd just do some updates, just with a year of sort of learning and putting together some thoughts based on what happened last year. The reason I'm going back is I'm obviously not right in the head on some level, but however, the normal version of me didn't turn up last year, so I'd quite like to go back and just have a better day. So, so back into the fray. So, what I want to talk about this post is about base training and the importance of it. I've been reading this book, Training for the Uphill Athlete, by Steve Howe, Scott Johnson, and Kilian Jornet. Really interesting read. If I'm honest, there's nothing groundbreaking in here, but it kind of it reiterates the stuff you need to be doing. And one of the things, there's a couple of things I like in here. The massage therapist in me loves the fact that when they talk about recovery, the top three in order of importance are diet, sleep, and massage, and then it filters down. And on a side note, massage is really important from recovery, but also identifying issues before they become issues. And on that, I would advise that you do that on your recovery week so that you're getting the maximum bang for buck. So, but one of the things I really like, never ever underestimate the importance of base fitness. And I think just quietly on a personal level, I went a bit wrong last year on that. I was probably running too hard. And looking at it objectively, what I realized is that when I train for an Ironman, I get all my base fitness done on the bike. And then because I don't need to run as much, my run training is quite specific. So where I think I went wrong last year is I was probably just running too fast and kind of running easy. But for most of us age group athletes and recreational athletes, we're running too hard. We're running in zone 3 most of the time. So that's the thing. This build, I'm actually concentrating on running in that easy zone 2 just to rebuild my aerobic base. I think it kind of dropped off. I've been an endurance athlete for years, but it kind of dropped off. I had a couple of years where I wasn't doing much recently after a surgery to have a broken rib plated. So the thing is, I think looking at it objectively from last year, and I think that's the thing sometimes you need to do. You need to look at what you did in the past to go, okay, were the things that I did wrong or were the things that I need to do better? And what I love about the book is that they describe it in a really nice way about your thresholds. And combination of the book and watching an interview with Scott Johnson where he talks about you can't push your aerobic threshold up. Sorry, you can't drag it up from the top, you have to push it up from the bottom. So if you want to increase your aerobic threshold, same with your lactate threshold, you need to be underneath those thresholds and pushing up from the bottom. You can't train harder and expect to drag it up. You might get a little bit of a physiological response, but probably not the response that you're wanting. And that's a really, really great way to describe it. You know what I mean? It's there's a lot to be said for that. And I guess the hard part for a lot of us is how slow we feel we're running. And the book talks about that. And I'm type A. I'm guilty of it, just going too hard. And so I've really been concentrating. The race is a long way away, but it's also not a long way. It's about 7 months, 8 months. So it's not far from a build point of view. But I've just had a kind of ease back into training phase, and I've just transitioned into from 3 runs a week to 4 runs a week. And this, for the next 2 months, is more of a proper build, but it's still all in a base phase. And I've just personally slowed everything down to just focus on building the conditioning in my legs, running easy, and just banking some miles. And then I've been using swimming as recovery, and then gym work to work on my stability and core strength for the running. So that's kind of where I'm at. And I think the thing is that one of the things I've discovered to help me slow down is some of my, especially this time of year where it's winter here, is some of my runs I go run in the dark with my head torch. So the other morning I was in Botlake Forest before 6 a.m. It's pitch black, and the cool thing about that with your head torch, where there's this pull of light, it kind of slows you down anyway, because you're trying to make sure that you're not standing on tree roots and things like that. And the other unexpected bonus about that is there's nobody in there, so nobody sees me running slow. Because I think that's the thing, we need to put our egos to the side when we're doing this stuff, and it's about putting the foundation in place so we can do the interesting stuff later on. But it's all about turning up on race day. You know, you're not training for a 100-meter sprint, you're training for 85 kilometers with over 2,600 meters of vertical. And to put it in context, on the day, I got 90,888 steps for the day. I screenshotted that off my Garmin. And so it's a big day out on your feet. So be under no illusion, it's going to be a tough day. But I think right now it's a case of building the foundations. And you know, every coach out there will tell you that, you know what I mean? And it's the other key thing is being consistent and having my advice is have a plan where you're kind of balancing the load and balancing the recovery. So I'll go over where my week is right now, and it's going to be like this for the next couple of months. But basically, Monday is an easy run home, and I try and do that in zone 2. It's a bit of a challenge because I'm quite fatigued at the end of the day, but I'm getting better at that. And I'm just putting in some walk phases just to slow me down. And then when I start running, I just try and start running easy again. Tuesday is swim and gym, and the swim is active recovery. Wednesday is sort of a 15 to 20k run in Botlake Forest in zone 2, and I'm doing that at the moment in the dark because it's just helps slow me down. Thursdays is I've just introduced a treadmill session where I'm just doing some intervals, like it's a 30-minute run, and I'm doing sort of 3 minutes on, 2 minutes off, and I'm just slowly working on building the pace. Like the other day it was at 5 minute per k pace, so I was going quickish but not hard, and eventually the idea is to do some proper speed work on those. But at this stage I'm just opening up the hips a little bit, and I'm just trying not to load myself too much too soon. So I do that as part of a gym session. Friday is a swim day, and Saturday at the moment is long run, and then Sunday I'm doing a swim in a gym, and that's a recovery swim. And it's what I found, like once I get to the next stage where I introduce another run, Sunday will be a swim followed by a 1 to 2 hour run. It's still early days yet, and that'll be sort of August, September time that I'll start doing that, and the other runs will go into the hills. So if that gives you an idea of a plan, it fits in with my life, and it's one of those things where the key thing is that nobody lives your life but you, and it's about finding out the balance. And right now I've just found that balance of running and swimming. The swimming just freshens up my legs and flushes them out. And I know last year on Sundays when I was doing a swim the day after a 3 hour run in the hills, and then the run after that swim on the Sunday was so much better. My legs felt so much better. So, but you can get your active recovery by sitting on a bike and doing some easy spinning. The book talks about active recovery and doing things like that, and they're kind of like, we're not sure how it works, but it does. The science is still a bit iffy. I think it's just the muscles pumping through under light load helps just flush out toxins. That would be the best way to describe that, I think. Stand to be corrected on that. It's just my 2 cents worth. So I think, for what it's worth, right now, it's just a case of getting yourself into shape. And then what I would also suggest is, and I'm struggling with this at the moment, is find a build-up race. And I'm on the fence on this. I looked at the Tekapo 50. It's in September. It's going to be freezing. Accommodation in Tekapo is outrageous. And I'm kind of like, oh, I'm on the fence on that one. I don't think I want to be that cold for that long at this time of year. So the Valley Ultra and the Spectacle are looking quite interesting, but they're in sort of December, and that's starting to get a little bit close to Old Ghost Road, where I want to do an event, have a bit of recovery, and then do my final build. And it may be that I might just go and run the Paparoa Trail in November with some mates, and we'll do like it's 55k. We'll just go and do kind of a controlled long day out on the feet. Kind of what we kind of want to do is, from a race point of view, practice some nutrition, but there will be stops at huts and a bit of flapping around, and stops for taking photos and stuff, because it looks like it'll be a cool day out. So, but I think it depends where you're at as an athlete. For me, I've been an endurance athlete for a long time, so I don't necessarily need to go and do race to get race experience. And I think that's the thing. If you've not done a lot of races, sometimes going and doing some races to help you go through the process of getting ready for the day, turning up with lots of other people, managing your pace at the start of the race, and then trying to execute a good day, working on nutrition, it could be very beneficial. It depends where you're at, but my advice on that is, don't get distracted by doing events that take you away from doing the key thing that you're focusing on, which is the Old Ghost. That should always be in the back of your mind, that is the target, and that everything should be tailored towards that. And if you start getting it distracted by going and doing lots of events, and then the recovery from those take you away from the consistent miles that you need to be doing and the specific training that you need to be doing, then I think you need to think about it. So that's kind of it. I guess this is all about, it's a long way away, but you need to be doing your base training now and building that aerobic engine. I think the next episode, I want to talk about running poles. Seems to be all sorts of schools of thought on that. My take on it is, and we'll talk about it a bit more in depth, is that on the long climbs in the Old Ghost Road, the running poles allow you to be more vertical. They allow you to engage your upper body and your arms. And I think that it's less fatiguing overall on your body, that when you get to the ridgeline across to Lyle Saddle, I think it's just going to be a little bit less fatiguing, so you'll hopefully have a bit more energy in the tank for the descent. So we'll go into that a little bit more depth, but that's a little taster of it. And I will speak to you later. So hopefully this stuff's helpful. And if you got an entry in, well done. And if you're on the wait list, the reality is that there's a high probability you'll get to race. Last year there was 158 people on the wait list that all got offered a spot. And this is the important thing to think about. So that means that with 300 entries, half the field who entered at the start didn't make it to the start line. So, and obviously some of that's life happens, but the reality is that if you're training for it, you need to be mindful that there's a high dropout rate, and that you need to be mindful of managing the body so you don't get broken. So anyway, enough from me. Speak to you later. Bye bye.